But recently, the first Africa-wide survey of the economic impact of COVID-19 on cultural industries was published, and it found that the financial losses in the cultural and creative industries, especially in South Africa, amounted to billions and billions and billions. To talk about this particular survey and how and where it was done, I'm joined by the Associate Professor of Communication at the University of Kinshasa, Ribio and Nzeza, Bunketi, Buse. Prof, good morning. Thank you so much for joining me all the way from Kinshasa. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. Prof, you'll just give us your initial observations in terms of the impact of COVID-19 on Africa's cultural industry. Give us a macro picture of what you see.
I see that the creative industries across the continent are suffering from the pandemic, even if it's very difficult to see it because we often don't have figures and data widely spread. But creative people are suffering, and they are not able to be in good condition in order to continue producing and creating goods and services.
Prof, how are you able to quantify these losses? The cultural and creative industry throughout Africa very much informal. So how does one quantify the losses?
Yes, that was an exercise just to compare the different surveys that has been conducted in different countries about the losses during the lockdown period. So I had to search for countries who have available data. I found in Senegal an organization called Association des métiers de la musique, who conducted a survey to assess the economic impact of the pandemic in the specific context. And I found also the same in Namibia with a company which holds the Africa Creative Guide. We have also the South African Culture Observatory, SACO, who did it very well. We had even found in Kenya and T-Hub in Uganda, and also myself in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I had to look at those reports and to see the common or the similar entries, and to do the exercise of comparing the situation across all those countries. And hopefully, each of those countries represents a particular region of the continent, so that gives a sense of diversity, a sense of balance of the results that I have discovered.
Now, it's a very grim discovery, Prof, and obviously we need to find a way. Or what did your study find in terms of how do we revive the cultural industry as widely as possible across the African continent post-COVID?
Post-COVID, there are a lot of recovery plans led by firms and government, but the most important for me is to call on African government to regularly organize surveys in order to have evidence, to have fact figures about the way the creative sector are evolving. It's very important because they cannot invest in a sector if they don't know what is happening on the ground. That is the first step in order to see a good revival of the creative sector after the pandemic. That is the first step. The second step also would be having good cultural policies in order to support the sector, because in many of those countries, the cultural policy, in some cases, they don't exist, or in other cases they exist, but they are not well implemented. That most of the time used like a cosmetic tool for international purposes, but on the ground they are not doing, they are not conducting appropriate action to support the creative sector.
Yeah, and I suppose in Africa in general, one needs to start moving towards formalizing the entertainment and cultural industry so that there's some sort of planning and strategizing, and some sort of security as well for people who are operating these industries.
Would you repeat?
I'm saying your research then would also then suggest that it's now almost overtime that we should start working towards formalizing the entertainment and cultural industry.
Yes, it's very important because I often repeat that we cannot invest, or government or other international bodies cannot invest in a sector they don't know. I can just refer to Professor Orama, the chair of the Afrexim Bank, who explained that they have granted the creative sector of $500 billion for the 2 coming years to support the creative industry. But one of his ideas is to have a deep understanding of the way the creative sector works. His difficulties is characteristic, even there is a high level of informality, how we can deal with that. It's very important. How the experience of Bollywood in India was very interesting. What made the success of the Bollywood? And we should also invest in studies, in consulting, in field work to understand deeply what can make the creative sector in Africa successful, so that the flow of money, of investment will come after, will follow follow the strategies that have been already designed in order to have an effective result in the coming years.
My guest is Associate Professor of Communication at the University of Kinshasa, Ribio, Nzeza, Bunketi, Buse. And the Prof has been doing a survey trying to quantify the loss, the economic loss to the entertainment and cultural sector, especially on the African continent. Prof, how is this being idealistic? Are we being idealistic if we say, or if we suggest that the formalization of cultural and entertainment industries in Africa, given the kind of political landscapes and agendas that exist on the continent in terms of leadership, etc., would actually become a reality, because the cultural and entertainment space can also be used as a tool to propagate a particular message, but also to challenge powers that be?
Yes, I think it's very important. And I have learned that the African Union has dedicated this year to art, culture, and heritage, just to show the role that the role that culture can play to sustain the unity, to create a social cohesion, social inclusion of all kinds of people, to facilitate even the trade. Because now we are talking about the free trade agreement, the free trade area of the continent, but I think culture, the mutual understanding between different countries, will foster that initiative. It's very important. With my study, I try to show, or it is in the line of the economic contribution of the creative industries to national wealth, but on the other side, you cannot forget that culture is something is aesthetic, something is symbolic, and culture can also, apart from the economic point of view, can help the continent to move forward. We have many wars across the continent, many conflicts, and so on and so forth, and culture has an important role to play.
Yeah. Professor Ribio Nzeza Bunketi Buse from the University of Kinshasa, Associate Professor of Communication. Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. A very interesting conversation, and I think it's a conversation that we need to continue having, especially on the African continent, because culture and entertainment is very important, especially when it comes to communicating the message of freedom